Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely.
Today we're going to tackle a question that's been bugging, well, pretty much everyone for ages.
Yeah.
Do we actually have free will?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we just kind of going through the motions, like, are we really calling the shots?
Right.
To help us unpack all of this, we're going to be looking at a lecture by Denis called Free Will is Not an Illusion.
Interesting.
He's a physiologist, very renowned.
Oh, wow.
And he spent his career studying how living organisms work.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got some really interesting ideas about how our bodies might actually provide clues to this whole free will mystery.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's fascinating how he approaches it, you know?
Yeah.
From a scientific perspective, he's basically saying, like, we can't ignore the physical reality of our bodies when we're talking about something as complex as free will. We have to think about the nuts and bolts of what makes us tick. You know, like understanding those intricate processes happening at the cellular level, maybe that can give us some new insights into this whole age-old question of, you know, do we really choose?
Yeah. Okay, so we're not just talking about some abstract, philosophical idea here. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty.
The nitty-gritty.
Of, like, cells and molecules. Yeah. And Noble starts with the very building blocks of life.
Right.
Right? Those basic elements, like hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen.
Right. The stuff we all learned about in high school chemistry.
Exactly. Stuff we all learned about in high school. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And it might seem like a really simple concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
These elements combine to form molecules.
Right.
Those molecules interact. And boom, our actions are predetermined.
Like a chain reaction.
Yeah, like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
But Noble challenges this kind of assumption.
Okay, how so?
So he points out that the possible combinations of these elements,
right,
especially when you think about DNA,
are practically infinite. Hold on, infinite. Like, there are that many ways our DNA can be arranged.
You got it.
Wow.
Think about it this way. You, listening to this right now, you're one of a kind.
That's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
There are so many possible DNA combinations that Noble actually says there isn't enough material in the entire universe to create every single possible one.
Okay.
So you, with your unique DNA, it's like winning the lottery.
I like that analogy.
Right.
Yeah, it makes it feel really special.
It does. It makes it feel really special. But okay, so having a unique DNA sequence, how does that connect to having free will?
Right. That's the big question. And that's exactly what Noble gets into.
Yeah.
He's saying that inherent uniqueness right from the start, that already suggests that we're not just pre-programmed robots, right?
Okay, yeah. So even though we're made of, these predictable elements, the way they combine creates this potential for individuality.
Right, like a vast possibility space.
Exactly, a vast possibility space, and that sets the stage for choice.
Exactly. And here's where things get even more interesting.
Oh, okay.
Noble focuses on one element in particular that plays a critical role in all of this.
Oh, lay it on me.
Water.
Water.
Yeah.
Okay, we all know water. We drink it.
Right.
We swim in it. I mean...
We're mostly made of it.
We're mostly made of it.
Yeah.
So what's so special about water in terms of free will?
Well, water is pretty bizarre when you look at it closely.
Okay.
It has these really unusual properties that make it essential for life and potentially even unique in the universe.
Okay, give me an example.
For instance, water is a liquid at a wide range of temperatures, right? But its individual components, hydrogen and oxygen, would be gases.
Oh, interesting.
At those same temperatures.
Okay.
And it's known as the universal solvent, right?
Right.
Because it can dissolve almost anything except fats.
Okay.
Which is super crucial for Noble's argument.
Wait, so water dissolves pretty much everything but fats?
Yeah.
How does that have to do with us making choices?
That's the brilliant part of Noble's insight.
Okay.
Because fats don't dissolve in water. They clump together.
Right.
Right. And they form these membranes.
Okay.
And those membranes are where a lot of the action happens when it comes to decision making within our cells.
Now, hold on a second. I thought DNA was supposed to be the blueprint for life.
Right.
What are these membranes doing that's so important?
Well, think of it this way. Like DNA, that's your instruction manual, right?
Okay.
But the membranes, those are where the instructions are actually put into action.
Oh, Interesting.
Like they act as control centers within our cells.
So they're the decision makers.
They're the decision makers.
Instead of DNA.
Well, DNA provides the information.
Yeah.
But the membranes are where the choices are made about how to use that information.
So picture this, like inside each of your cells are these tiny little command centers constantly making decisions.
Right.
But how do they actually choose?
Yeah, how do they choose? What's going on there?
Well, they have these incredible protein channels embedded within them.
Okay.
Think of them like tiny on-off switches that regulate the flow of information and chemicals in and out of the cell.
Yeah.
They essentially decide what gets through and what doesn't.
Okay.
And that, in a way, is a form of intelligence.
Oh, interesting.
The ability to choose between options.
So these membranes aren't just passive barriers.
Right.
They're actively involved in shaping how our cells respond to their environment.
Exactly.
Kind of like our brains, right?
Yeah.
Filtering information, making choices.
Like a brain for the cell.
Yeah, but on a microscopic level.
Exactly.
Wow, so that's what Noble sees as a potential basis for free will.
Like if our cells can make choices at this fundamental level.
Yeah.
Maybe that capacity scales up to our conscious decisions, too.
It's an intriguing idea.
It is a very intriguing idea, but there's another piece of the puzzle here.
Okay.
That makes things even more interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Brownian motion.
Brownian motion. Okay, now that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Isn't that something to do with the random movement of molecules?
You got it. Remember all those water molecules we were just talking about?
Yeah.
They're constantly in motion, bumping into everything around them.
Creating a kind of chaos.
Yeah, it's called Brownian motion.
Wow.
And it's not just some random jiggling.
Right.
It has huge implications for how our bodies work, even at the level of our DNA.
Hold on. You mean even our DNA, the blueprint of life, isn't just sitting there still.
Oh.
It's being jostled around by these hyperactive water molecules.
It is.
Wow, that's wild.
And that's where the debate between Noble and people who support the idea of neo-Darwinism gets interesting.
Okay, how so?
Both sides acknowledge this randomness, or what they call it?
Stochasticity.
Stochasticity, yeah.
A fancy word for randomness.
Right.
In biological processes.
So if both sides agree on this randomness, then where's the disagreement?
Oh, that's a good question.
What's the difference in how they see this randomness?
Yeah. Well, neo-Darwinists, especially those who argue against free will, see this randomness as just like blind chance.
Okay.
They're saying, our actions, even our thoughts, ultimately come down to these random mutations and environmental pressures that are outside our control.
Okay.
So it's like we're just along for the ride.
Okay, so we're just sophisticated robots following a program we didn't write.
Yeah, kinda.
But you said Noble has a different take on this?
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
He suggests that this randomness, it's not just blind chance. It actually plays a functional role in our ability to make choices. He argues that the constant jostling from Brownian motion creates a level of unpredictability that allows for real choice.
Okay.
Even at the molecular level.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
So instead of being slaves to randomness, he's saying we might actually harness it to make decisions.
That's his argument.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, and it directly challenges the neo-Darwinist view.
Right.
You've probably heard of Jerry Coyne.
Right.
He's a prominent evolutionary biologist who argues that free will is just an illusion.
Okay.
He has this quote. He says, "The illusion of agency is so powerful that we will always act as though we had choices.
Right.
Even though we don't."
Oh, wow.
So he's basically saying that this feeling of making choices is just a trick our brains play on us.
That's a pretty bleak outlook.
It is.
But you said Noble had a problem with that line of reasoning.
Yeah, he does.
What?
Noble points out this really fascinating contradiction.
Oh, okay.
He's like, if we truly have no free will, how can we even be having this conversation right now?
Yeah.
I'm choosing to explain these ideas.
Right.
And you're choosing to question them.
Yeah.
Like, if everything is predetermined, then how can we even disagree?
Ooh, that's a good point.
Right.
It's like saying, I have no choice, but to believe I have no choices.
Exactly.
Takes your head spin a little, right?
It does.
Yeah.
It definitely highlights the limits of, looking at things in a purely deterministic way.
Okay.
And Noble uses this contradiction to argue that there's more to choice than just predetermined actions.
So maybe it's not just about saying, like, free will exists or it doesn't exist. Yeah. It's about exploring how this feeling of agency could actually come from the very stuff we're made of.
Exactly. In Noble's perspective, it challenges us to rethink what we even mean by choice in the first place.
Oh, okay.
Like, if our choices are being shaped by random molecular events, does that make them any less meaningful?
Right.
Does it change how we think about, taking responsibility for our actions?
That's a big one, right? Like, if randomness is playing a role, does that let us off the hook for our choices?
It's a complex question with no easy answer.
Right.
But what's important is that Noble, he opens up this new way of thinking about free will.
Okay.
He's suggesting that instead of being just a philosophical idea, it could be rooted in the actual physical processes happening inside our bodies.
So we're not just minds floating in a deterministic universe.
Right.
We're embodied beings. And that physical reality might actually be a key part of free will.
Precisely. And that's something that often gets overlooked in these kinds of debates.
Yeah.
We tend to think of free will as, like, separate from our bodies.
Right.
But Noble's argument is that they're deeply connected.
Now, I'm seeing how this all ties back to the water and the cell membrane idea. We've got this, like, inherent randomness happening at the molecular level.
Yeah.
And then we have these cell membranes acting like tiny decision makers.
Right.
Filtering information, shaping how our cells respond.
Exactly.
It's kind of like how we make decisions in our own lives, you know?
Yeah, like a microcosm of decision.
Yeah, exactly.
We're constantly bombarded with information.
You're right.
From our internal thoughts and feelings from the world around us. Our brains, they filter this information, weigh different options, and guide our actions.
So maybe our conscious decision-making is just like a zoomed-out version of what's already happening in every single cell of our bodies.
It's a fascinating possibility.
It is fascinating.
And it suggests that free will might not be an all-or-nothing thing.
Okay.
It could be more of a spectrum.
Yeah.
With different levels of choice being influenced by a mix of predetermined factors and random events.
So it's not like we have this magical free will switch that's either on or off.
It's more like a dimmer switch, where our ability to choose is being influenced by everything, from our genes to these random movements of molecules in our cells.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And that's what makes this whole discussion so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to find this, like, definitive yes or no answer to, do we have free will? It's about exploring this big gray area between pure determinism and pure randomness.
So instead of asking, do we have free will, we should be asking, how does choice actually emerge from this, like, super complex system of interacting factors?
Exactly. And that's a question that can't be answered by just one field of study.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Yeah. It requires looking at the problem from multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Bringing together ideas from physics, biology, neuroscience, even psychology.
Okay, so if Noble's right, and this randomness at the molecular level is actually part of how we make choices, does that mean we can control it in any way?
Can we learn to harness this Brownian motion to make better decisions?
That's a fantastic question, and it's something that scientists are just starting to investigate. There's some really intriguing research suggesting that practices like mindfulness might actually have an impact on the activity of our cells and even our genes.
So you're saying that just by changing how we think and behave, we might be able to nudge these tiny molecular processes in a direction that's, like, more beneficial.
It's certainly an area that deserves more exploration. It raises all sorts of possibilities about, the connection between our minds and bodies. And whether we can consciously influence our own biology.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
So even if we can't directly control the random movements of those molecules, we might still be able to influence the overall environment.
Right, like the context in which they're operating.
Where they're operating. It's like creating, like, more fertile ground for free will to flourish.
I love that analogy.
It really highlights the potential for agency. Even in a world where randomness plays such a big role.
Exactly.
It's not about being in complete control, but it's about understanding this complex dance of factors that shape our choices. And learning how to navigate it more skillfully.
It's like, instead of fighting against the randomness, we can learn to dance with it.
We can use it to our advantage.
Exactly.
I like that.
We can embrace that unpredictability and see it as an opportunity for creativity and growth.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the unique properties of water,
right?
The role of cell membranes as these tiny decision makers, and how Brownian motion might actually contribute to choice. Where does all this leave us? What does it mean for our understanding of free will?
Right.
The grand scheme of things.
I think the most important takeaway from all of this is that this question of free will, it's far more complex than we often realize.
Okay.
It's not a simple yes or no.
Right.
Noble's work.
Yeah.
It pushes us to consider the possibility that free will might emerge from this like really intricate interplay of deterministic and random processes happening within our own bodies.
So it's not about picking a side, free will or determinism.
Right.
It's about understanding how these seemingly opposing forces might actually work together to shape our choices.
Precisely. And that understanding, it changes how we view ourselves and our place in the world.
Okay.
It suggests that we're not just puppets on a string,
right?
But active participants in creating our own lives.
It's kind of empowering, isn't it?
It is.
To think that even at this really fundamental level, there's this potential for choice.
Right.
It's like we have a say, even in the random jiggling of molecules.
It is empowering.
Right.
And that sense of agency can be incredibly motivating.
Right.
It gives us a reason to engage with the world, to make choices that align with our values, and to try to become, the best versions of ourselves.
It also brings up some tricky questions, right?
Yes.
About responsibility.
Yeah.
Like if randomness is influencing our choices,
right,
does that make us less accountable for our actions?
That's a valid concern and something philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I think what's important to remember is that even with randomness in the mix, we still have the capacity for reflection, deliberation, and intention.
So even if we can't control every single factor that's shaping our choices, we can still be intentional about how we respond to those influences.
Exactly.
Okay.
We can work on cultivating, virtues like wisdom, compassion, courage, which can help us make more positive choices.
So maybe it's not about trying to find like absolute freedom from either determinism or randomness.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about finding a way to balance those forces, a way to like navigate this complexity of life with both agency and humility.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It brings us back to Noble's main point, that free will isn't an illusion. It's a complex, multifaceted phenomenon that comes from this dynamic interplay between our biology and our lived experiences.
It's a dance between nature and nurture.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot to think about.
It is.
I don't know about you, but I feel like my brain just got a serious workout.
It's definitely a thought-provoking topic.
Yeah.
The one we can discuss for hours.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I think we've laid a good foundation for understanding Noble's perspective and the, the important questions it raises.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's given me, like, a whole new appreciation for how amazing the human body is.
Yeah.
Who knew that those tiny cells and molecules were having such deep philosophical discussions?
I know, right? It's like they're the real deep divers here.
Yeah, they are.
And it's not just about understanding, like, the science itself, right?
Right.
It's about like how we can use this knowledge to actually live our lives.
That's important.
So if choice really is this, dynamic process shaped by things both inside and outside of us, how can we like create environments that actually support us making more conscious and intentional choices?
That's a great point. It's not enough to just grasp the theory.
Yeah.
We need to figure out how to put it into practice.
Exactly. So what are some like practical takeaways from all this?
Well, I think one big takeaway is that it encourages us to be more aware of the choices we're making.
Okay.
Both the big ones and the seemingly small ones.
Yeah.
Right. We need to remember that even those everyday decisions can have a ripple effect.
Right.
Not only on our own lives, but on the lives of others.
So it's not just about like those big, like life-altering choices.
Right.
It's about like being more present in each moment, realizing that all those little decisions we make throughout the day, they actually matter.
They do. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's also about, cultivating a sense of curiosity.
Okay.
And being open to new information.
Yeah.
The more we learn about this, complex interplay of factors that shape our choices, the better equipped we are to make decisions that are both, informed and intentional.
And maybe even challenge some of those, like, deterministic assumptions, right?
Exactly.
That can sometimes make us feel, like, limited in what we can do.
It's about recognizing that we have more agency than we might think.
Yeah.
Even in a world that often feels, kind of chaotic and unpredictable. So instead of feeling overwhelmed by all this complexity, we can really try to embrace it, see it as an opportunity to grow and be more creative.
And remember that even with all this, like, randomness, there's still space for purpose and meaning.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into free will, I'm left feeling both, like, amazed and empowered.
Yeah.
Amazed by, like, the incredible complexity of our bodies in the universe.
Right.
And empowered by this realization that, like, we actually have the capacity to shape our own paths.
Yeah.
Even if it's not in some, like, absolute predetermined kind of way.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Recognizing those things we can't control while also realizing the power we have to make choices that really do shape our lives.
I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. It's not about finding a definitive answer to the question, do we have free will?
Right.
It's more about, like, embracing the mystery and the complexity of it all.
And continuing to explore.
Yeah.
Ask questions. And challenge what we think we know.
Yeah.
Because as we've seen, even the tiniest molecules can have a huge impact on how we understand what it means to be human.
So to all you deep divers out there, I'll leave you with this. What if, instead of seeing randomness as, like, a threat to our free will, we saw it as an opportunity?
Oh, I like that.
An opportunity to embrace the unknown, make choices with intention, and create a world where both freedom and responsibility can thrive.
That's something to ponder.
It is something to ponder. It's something to think about as you navigate, all the complexities of your own life. So until next time, keep on diving deep.
And keep those questions coming.